You are tuned in to this edition of the Barbershop Chronicles with your host, Abdallah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abdallah. I'm the President and CEO of the Urban League of San Diego County, and welcome to Urban League Today. We are here today with our Barbershop Chronicles, and we are interviewing Commander Ben Kelso of the San Diego Police Department. Commander Kelso, if you could please share with our audience a little bit about you, your background, why you came to San Diego, why you became a police officer, and why you've remained a police officer for 30 plus years.
Wow, that's quite a question. It's quite a story. How much time you got?
As long as you need.
Well, first of all, I am Commander Ben Kelso with the San Diego Police Department. I've been a police officer now for coming up on 35 years in a few months. Mm-hmm. I'm originally from Detroit. Went to high school in Detroit, played basketball. Went on to college 1 year in Ohio, and found myself not having the experience that I had in Detroit. Detroit is, well, at least at that time, it was a fairly black city, chocolate city we called it back then, and I wound up going to a small school that just didn't have a lot of diversity. The only folks that were there that looked like me were the athletes, and there was only a few of us. And that wound up being what I would call an assimilation sort of crisis for me, and I found myself home at the end of that first year, and looking for a place to get myself going again educationally. And I had some friends out here in California that were going to community college out here, and I wound up coming out to go to Palomar College, and eventually started taking some classes. I took one class that was really important. It was called a career assessment course, and in that class you filled out a Scantron sheet that asked you a bunch of questions that came out of a box, right? Yeah. For those that don't know what Scantron, you all know what Scantron is. Okay. You know, you fill in these little bubbles, right, and then you match it up to an answer card, and it'll tell you based on the way you answer those questions, what sort of career fields would be good for you. And believe it or not, in that class, law enforcement wound up being the number one for me several times, and it was something I never actually thought about, being in law enforcement. I always thought I wanted to follow my father's footsteps. My father played professional sports. He was a basketball player in the NBA, played for the Detroit Pistons, and went on to be a high school, college and a high school basketball coach after that. But I got out here in the summer of 1986, and found myself in Palomar College, and didn't get an opportunity to actually play there. I wound up having a knee injury that stopped me from being able to play ball, at least at that collegiate level at the time. And there were some other things that took place. Life kind of got in the way too. I wound up having offspring. We all know what that's all about, right? Now,
it happens.
Yeah, having a choice between trying to get myself back into a bigger school to play basketball, or, you know, be a parent. Well, obviously I chose being a parent, and that means I needed a job, right? And I met some officers that worked for San Diego PD. I was working in a gym at the time, at 24-Hour Fitness. I think it was called Family Fitness back then, right? And
Family Fitness Center.
Yeah, the officers were working out, and you know, I kind of let them stay late while I was closing up, and that spawned a relationship. And then eventually, they offered to take me on a couple ride-alongs, which I did, and said, hey, you know, you could do this job. Which, where I come from, like I said, I grew up in Detroit, but I also spent a lot of time at Flint too, where my grandmother lived, and being a police officer in the community I lived in this this complex called the Atherton Terrace Apartments. All right, you didn't want to be a law enforcement officer back then there, but there was an officer that was there, believe it or not, that he made a pretty big impression on us, because it was his foot patrol, his foot beat, and he pretty much worked with us day in and day out. He was kind of football coach. He was the basketball coach. He was the officer that was always there. So you build a relationship with him, all right? And he knew everybody in the housing complex. It's kind of like when you think of the Sea Breeze Gardens. I think we used to call, what did we used to call it back then? Bay Vistas.
Bay Vista.
Oh yeah, Sea Breeze. Think of that, except
Okay.
a lot bigger, bigger complex, right? He knew everybody, right? And he knew everybody in your family, so it wasn't like you could hide from him if you got in trouble, because he could find you really easily.
Right.
If your grandmother didn't give you up or anybody else gave you up, right? You know, he was going to find you. So his style of being a law enforcement officer back then was relational, right? And he basically became a part of the community there, even though he didn't live there, right? But you saw him day in and day out every day. And I think when I got into law enforcement with the San Diego Police Department back in 1990, I went through training phases in different areas of the city. A couple of times in Logan Heights, and Southeastern was one of my phases also, and Roulette Armstead was the captain at Southeastern at the time. And for those who don't know Roulette Armstead, she's pretty much a trailblazer for black officers and particularly black women. She was one of a kind back then. And I went to her and said that Southeastern Division was the closest to what my home was like, and I'd like to work here. And she made it happen. I was the only one out of my academy that she picked up to come to Southeastern Division.
So that's a great segue into what you're describing back in Detroit is community-based policing. You know, where that particular officer knew the community, knew the residents. So what is your version of community-based policing?
Well, my version of community-based policing is really relational, just like I described before. It's about collaborating and coming together. It's not just about crime fighting, and a lot of people really get caught in that. Maybe the media portrays that a lot as well, that public safety is just about crime, right? But it's not. It's about a lot more than crime. It's a shared experience, right? It requires law enforcement and the community to kind of come together and to have a relationship, right? So that when things happen, people aren't afraid to talk to law enforcement, right?
Right.
People aren't afraid to participate, right? And to be a part of the process. But in order to do that, particularly with the way law enforcement is today and the media and everything else, you really do have to have a strong relationship in general. You got to know one another. You got to build trust with one another, right? Because things are going to happen that are going to cause impact on that relationship, particularly with law enforcement, right? And the funny thing about law enforcement is when these things take place, they don't necessarily have to take place in your community or your city, right? Even or your state. A law enforcement incident that has negative optics, right, and negative consequences, no matter where it takes place, it kind of ripples across the nation, and we feel that energy wherever you are, right? So by having a relationship with the community, you're able to kind of bridge those gaps and kind of be able to overcome those flashpoints where we have what I'm going to call bad policing, all right, and stay connected and work through things. It's no different than your personal relationships that you have with family members. If you got a spouse, right? Every day is not a good day. In fact, most days are great days. There's a lot of bad days, right? But if you have a relationship, right, you can overcome those bad days and wake up and start new the next day. Fresh day. We all get a fresh start the next day, and we go through this all over again.
Right.
So that's kind of what it looks like to me.
Right. And I think that's the key in terms of when you have those incidents that don't look good on television. When you have a police shooting in another state, another city, and you're all wearing that uniform, it's like, in essence, people think you're co-signing for that behavior, when in fact that may not be the case at all. So again, that's a great segue into, we're here in a community barbershop, and we have 4 barbers here, and I'd like them to introduce themselves. We can start here with Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris, and how did you get here?
My name is Christopher Seifert. I've been a barber for about 15 years now, and I'm from San Diego, Southeast San Diego, born and raised, and yeah.
Okay, you've been a barber for 15 years?
Yes.
Okay, all right. How long you been in this shop?
Well, the original shop was ISIS across the street.
Okay.
And it burned down in 2022.
Right.
And we got here at the beginning of this year to start our a newfound barbershop under Big Cuts.
All right, Big Cuts, all right.
I used to need a barber back in the day.
They still have, but they can shave you up.
Right up to about,
Clean you up.
I want to say about 2010 or so,
Clean
and
you up.
then my hairline just kind of,
Clean you up.
had to let it
You
go.
know? No, don't do that. See, let's pivot over here to Keon. Keon, what's your story? How long you been here? Let me be a barber. Where you from?
My name is Kenyon Pettis. I'm from Southeast San Diego, born and raised. I've been a barber for about 14 years now, going on my 14th year. Love it, and we had started a program, me and my brothers, maybe about 5 or 10 years ago. In between that time, it was called Bars of Fitness. We help the community. We help them with free workouts and remind them of health and fitness. So we've been doing that for the last 5 to 10 years, and it's been going well. Our original barbershop had got closed down, so I had been moving around for a little bit, and I found a home here at Big Cuts, and got welcomed in by the sister and the brothers that's in the shop, and just grateful for the opportunity to be here to work with them.
Okay. So Big Cuts. Let's pivot to Big over here. Big, what's your story?
Well, I'm a barber, and I'm a preacher. I also go by the name Evangelist Mark Ritchie, but in here they call me Big, Bigums. The name of the barbershop is Big Cuts. I'm big, and that's Cuts. We co-own the place, and we just here trying to make a barbershop a barbershop. It's a place that you could come and get something that you need and go home with a smile. Walk in with a frown, leave out with a smile. That's the object of this shop.
Okay. So you do some ministry here?
Every now and then we get into it.
Okay.
We get into it all.
All right.
Depends on the situation at the shop.
Okay.
But for the most of it, we deal in facts and opinions.
Okay. We're gonna get into it today.
I'm sure Chris is going to ask one of you, is that a fact or is that an opinion?
Okay. All right. And we got our female, the beautician.
Yes.
Okay, and this is Shay. Shay, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my name is Deshay, and I've been doing here since 1999. I've been licensed, and that was always my my passion, and it's a therapy for me. And I've been working by myself for the last 20 years, and now I was introduced to Big Chris and Keon, and earlier this year, and I feel like I'm at home, and it's been a good experience for me. I feel like it was perfect timing for me. So that's
Okay.
And I'm from San Diego, all over. So that's the best way I could put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you just work with women, or do you men?
I used to work for mostly all women, but now it's like 85% men. So that really was good coming to a barbershop too. And now I do women and men, so they feel comfortable, and that was the main thing.
Okay.
I feel like I'm at home.
All right. Good deal. Okay. We'll pivot back here to Commander Kelso and to talk about the Neighborhood Services Division at SDPD. What is it? What do you guys do there?
Well, recently the San Diego Police Department went through a major restructuring, and what the chief of police did was organize the department much like a business model, right? So he created the operations branch, which encompasses all the patrol, right, investigations, special services, and the neighborhood services. Neighborhood services encompasses the quality of life issues for San Diego, right? It deals with homelessness, so I have neighborhood policing division, which deals with the homelessness officer services and other things that are homelessness related. I also have the traffic division, which deals with vehicles and all the issues related to that, all right? And we have a new division, which is called Community and Youth Services, and that encompasses officers that work with kids in schools and community relations officers. So the Neighborhood Services branch encompasses all three of those things together.
Okay. So again, that kind of ties into this whole community-based policing theme we're discussing here today. So let's bring the barbers into this discussion. You know, we're here in your shop. Community-based policing is the topic here. So we have four of you here. We'll start with Chris. What's your overall view, perspective on policing in San Diego?
Well, what I've been watching over the past couple months is, are you familiar with what happened on October 24th?
I am not. Specifically where? Here?
Here
San Diego?
in Blister Park, a man was asked to come out of his house, and he came out with his hands up, and he was shot 3 times with beanbags. Then a dog was released on him. The man came out in boxers with his hands up. And I don't understand why they had to use those type of measures for that situation.
Okay.
And even the lady downtown, I seen, she was being chased by the police, and she surrendered, threw her hands up, and they let a dog attack her, and they couldn't get the dog off of her. So I'm wondering, are there going to be any changes with using police dogs on the job when you can't have any control over them? You go over to a dog and he's still biting, and you can see that they're trying to get command to get the dog off, and you don't really have true control over the dog. So should we still be using those in law enforcement?
I think there's certainly a role for K9, but let's have Commander Kelso. Can you kind of explain to the barbers and to the community, you know, the purpose of K9 and, you know, how it's utilized, when it's utilized?
Well, we are actually doing a presentation on canines tonight at the Commission on Police Practices. Police dogs are essentially a de-escalation tool that is used for law enforcement to prevent larger escalations of force being necessary. They have been used traditionally for a long time, and I know there's some history that relate particularly to black folks in the black community on use of dogs and the imagery that it brings up. It doesn't look nice, all right, to see an animal essentially biting someone. The way they are used in San Diego, all right, and I don't want to get into the specifics of any particular incident, but what they're used for is to prevent from having to use a larger use of force, like shooting someone with a firearm or something like that. If they're someone that is armed or believed to be armed, that's what the dog is used for, to try to de-escalate those situations.
Did you not know about this?
I'm sorry?
The situation that he's speaking about? Have you never seen this?
I'm aware of the situations, yeah.
Because in boxers, hands in the air, and beanbag, I got hit with one of those before. That's not a good feeling.
Sure.
Then you let the dog go. So I kind of really feel like we're gonna let you get some work in today, boy. Go get it. Because it seems like it was all that's the problem. It was done.
There was no situation to de-escalate. He was already surrendered.
I had experience. I got bit by a police dog before when I was 14, and that kind of, I forgot all about it until you mentioned it. And I didn't hear no barking. We was getting a ride home, and the person that was giving us a ride, it was stolen, and we didn't know, but the police told my mom, and they've been watching the guy the whole day anyway. They put him on a high-speed chase, and then he jumped out the car and ran. I didn't know. I got out the car, and he jumped over a gate. I jumped up and was put down, and then all I know, it was a big dog just tearing up my leg, and they couldn't control it. They had to put me away and put a dog away, and they told my mom it was just a stretch, and it was a long story, but I had a big hole. It's not funny, but in my leg and everything.
Sure.
But that stuff is real. It made me think about that when he mentioned it. Yeah.
So is there concern with the community members that perhaps K-9, they're not really in control of the dogs? Or they're just letting the dogs, maybe be too aggressive with the community members?
Well, when you have a dog, you tell a dog to sit, you tell him to stay. But when you tell them to get them, they get them. But it should be a word or a measure that they use to make him let go. I mean, I would imagine they do.
They do.
Why aren't they doing that?
Well, they do, and they do use the words, but we're also talking about an animal that has its own brain and has its own way to view a situation. It's not going to be 100% with a dog, or just like it's not 100% with a human being, but they do what they can to try to minimize damage. But that doesn't mean it's mistake-free.
So should that dog be not with the force no more? Because I'm sure that he could have grabbed that dog, then he would have been, trying to hurt the police.
The other thing, I'm not an expert on the use of police canines. I just know that they are used as a tool, and like anything, they're not mistake-free. There's always going to be a margin of error at some point with an animal, right? But that doesn't mean that they're still not useful as a tool, because the alternative to not having that animal could be, a shooting, and that's always the last case scenario, the worst case scenario when we want to get to a shooting.
That's understandable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just believe that, the police in this community, they do their job. I see them drive back and forth right here, and where I was cutting hair before, it was a little bit different, and I do feel safer to see them come back and forth and check in the parking lot and making sure that we're good. And I just believe maybe that, maybe we can both learn something, to update, and like maybe we can do like a community meeting where we can find out the different things that we can do to help each other. Like how the officer said here, he said that we need to build a relationship. So maybe that's a point where we need to start doing, by building a relationship with the police officers that's around, so they know what's going on and we know what's going on, so that we can, counteract the problems that's happening.
Okay. So this all comes back to relationship building with law enforcement. So have a scenario. We have officer pulls up, parks his car, comes in. How is he going to be received in here?
Say, hello, how you doing, sir?
Okay.
How's your day going?
All right. Anything, any ill will?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, 9 times out of 10, it'll be somebody that's gonna cringe up, but as far as the barbers in here and the stylists in here, I can assure you, we all have nothing to hide. So it's like, you'll be welcome, open welcome arms, and hopefully you come to spend a few dollars, But yeah, we don't worry about that, and we like the police force. Another thing that we were talking about is the shop they got across the street right there with the methadone clinic. So it's a lot of trouble with that around here, and we wanted to talk to you about that as well. how do we get them moved? How do we get them, because they can go somewhere else. They don't have to be here. You just see a whole different cloud of people. But I guess that question will come up in a little bit.
So, how do we improve the relationships between the community and the police? Ideally, in an ideal world, what would it look like?
I believe police need to show up at all the community activities. The businesses, stop by, check on the owners and see, create a bond with the ownerships in the neighborhood. The police need what I believe they need to evaluate police officers to see if they're really fit for the job. Now, listening to his story about coming from Detroit and the community he came from, and then asking to work in a certain community here in San Diego that reminded him of where he came from, I think that it was in line and destined for him to do that. And are there other officers that have a background with community like that, where they're from, to be able to understand where they're working, understanding the type of communities that they're working in? And I think that would help out a lot. I don't really know the background of a lot of officers, but if I'm looking at officers that don't look like me, then I know they're probably not from where I'm from, because where I grew up is mostly African Americans. Now, it has changed over time, but I've never seen those police before. Didn't grow up with them, So I think that they have to really dig deep down and understand what people go through in the community, and don't just show up for a job.
I would certainly agree, and I'll share a quick story, about community-based policing from when I was, a teenager. The night before I started my senior year of high school, we felt like, hey, we're seniors now, we're kings of the school. Let's go trash our school. So we go there, paint cans and firecrackers and all kinds of toilet paper to school, the whole shot, right? So some guys brought M80s, and so it sounded like there was like gunfire going off. So what happens? The neighbors call the police.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like a mad dash. Everybody's scurrying, and me and a couple of my buddies, we're running. And we run towards the tennis courts. Police car pulls over. Lights are just blazing. 2 officers get out. And we're all college prep kids. And we're like, we're done. We're done. And for me, my dad was a stern disciplinarian. I knew what was going to happen to me if he had to come pick me up from the police department. I was dead. Straight up dead. Right? So, who happens to get out of the car? A police officer who had gone to that high school, graduated 5 years earlier. His partner wanted to arrest us and take us downtown. He says, no, I know these kids. Pulls us aside. What are you doing? Well, we're just toilet paper in the school. He's like, no, here's what you're going to do. You're not going to go to jail tonight. However, what you're going to do is you are going to be spending the next 30 days cleaning up after school. Or I'm going to take all of you to your houses, you know where you all lived, and I'm going to tell your parents. So it was a relief to have detention, clean up the school, so my dad didn't kill me because I was up there doing no good at the school. So that, aligns with what you're saying. Someone from the community knows the kids, went to the high school, and knew that not arresting us was the right thing to do because we were good kids. It's just something stupid. So I believe that's community-based policing, at its finest.
Right.
Because we salvaged 3 kids. I mean, right. If we have a record, are we still gonna be going to college? Probably not. Probably not. So, Yeah, my story. Shay?
I feel building trust because I've been pulled over before, not for me, but they was harassing the person in passenger. And at one point they said it wasn't a license plate on the front of my car. And when I looked, I was like, so it's like building trust and stereotyping too, just because the area you are in, and ask, have I ever had a record? Or I never was asked that before, but when they put, so I think it's building the trust and seeing your peers a little bit more, even if not, just introduce it, like know how to talk to people though, know how to not just be an enforcer, because there been times where they follow my kids to like a gated community, and I'm coming outside and they yelling at me, telling me, I'm like, this is my daughter, but it's like learning how to talk to people too without making it seem like it's something bad, because nobody did nothing wrong. So that's a lot too.
Okay. And that's a great segue. We were talking about, people from the community knowing, the inhabitants of the community. So let's pivot to recruiting. Commander Kelso, what is the SDPD's philosophy around recruiting from the community? Can you share that with our audience?
The police department likes to embrace the concept of diversity in recruiting and try to make it mirror the demographics of the city in general. With that, we do struggle to find enough candidates to fill our academies across the board, all right? But they make great efforts to reach out to other areas to try to bring people not just in San Diego, but from other parts of the state and other parts of the country to draw them to San Diego for employment with the police department.
What is the greatest impediment that you see with getting members of the community to take the challenge of becoming a law enforcement officer?
Well, if I had all those answers, we probably would have a problem. But what I think some of the biggest hurdles, at least for people of color, into getting into the San Diego Police Department is just the perception of law enforcement and the job and what it's about. And I myself experienced that myself. My parents did not want me to take this job, all right? But I had to make my own choice, my own decision, all right? And now, when I look back on it, it was a good choice. But when I was 21 years old, my father told me, let someone else's son be a police officer. We don't want you to do that for lots of reasons, all right? Mainly what you see on TV and things like that. People think that, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get shot, you're going to have, these are all other issues that cause problems in your life because you take such a hard, stressful job that has a lot of danger involved in it. The training's great though, and I will tell you that my experience, even though I've seen a lot of things and witnessed a lot of things that helped me to be able to understand their perception, my parents' perception. You see things in this job that are abnormal, right? That you deal with people mainly when you're dealing with calls for service on their worst day. You're dealing with people that have things that take place in their lives that are just horrific, and someone has to come to the door and be able to help them through that. And I mean, you name it, deaths in the family, deaths of children, right? They're victims of crime, right? Abuse and all these other things. And law enforcement is the gateway to processing that for them, right? To getting them services or getting them on a path or a channel to be able to deal with their issue. You have to deal with law enforcement every time someone in your family gets hurt, right? When you call 911, even though it's for a medical issue, police are faster to respond usually than the fire, right? Because fire responds as a group, right? But police officers are out there individually, and they show up to scenes and help to stabilize it to bring fire in. In some communities, police have to show up, unfortunately, just to protect fire. Fire won't feel safe going into a scene unless law enforcement is there to be able to make sure they don't get hurt going to the scene. And I've seen that play out lots of times here when situations are chaotic and people are hurt, emotions run high, right, particularly for the bystanders and the witnesses, and you want to help an individual that's hurt, but you got people all around you on the periphery there that are upset and emotionally charged and traumatized, and they don't know how to control themselves, right? And you need to bring people in for that as well. So finding people that have that aptitude and that ability to be able to manage their own emotions while trying to help people is a challenge and a task for law enforcement. And I think it turns a lot of people off of the career field, all right? And I would say that people who take jobs that involve helping people are very, very special people that can work through their own issues, their own trauma, because law enforcement officers and firefighters and ambulance, they're traumatized just as much as the people are that are experiencing the situation, but they're trained to process it differently, right? And to contain it so that they can help do the job and get the people the assistance they need.
Do you think that law enforcement officers actually would share the fact that they're human as well? That would be a better way to approach certain situations in the community, to let that guard down a little bit and say, oh yeah, I'm Commander Kelso, yeah, I had a rough day. If somebody is kind of up in arms, I know for a fact that I had an incident. This was after the Kenosha, Wisconsin shooting several years back, where I was going to lunch and patrol sedan stopped. Officer gets out, comes up to me, and I didn't give him a chance to talk. I just said, not today. I wasn't in the mood to deal with law enforcement on that particular day because, we've been receiving several phone calls at the Urban League saying, hey, Urban League, we're being killed. What are you guys going to do about it? So I was just under assault, so to speak, at that moment. And the officer was a young officer, and he said, hey, I just want to say hi. And he said, I'm from, Barrio Logan. I joined the department because I didn't have good experiences with law enforcement growing up. They over-patrolled my community, and I want to make a difference. Because, but how can I do it if no one will talk to me? Like you didn't even want to talk to me. I just want to say hello. Now I felt bad about that, right? Okay. I said, hey, that's on me. I apologize. I gave the guy my card, looked at it, said, you're the Urban League? And you're treating me like this? Hey, I'm human too, okay? We're both having a bad day here. But I think that him taking the opportunity to say, you know what? I just want to say hi. It's rough out there. People are not always nice to me. Now I just want to make a difference. And I think that, when you have these opportunities to talk to the community members and to be humanized, I think that really helps. And that's kind of a good segue into the Coffee with a Cop. If you can kind of share what that's all about and have the barbers kind of weigh in as well.
So Coffee with a Cop is a simple concept, right? It's a way to bring law enforcement and the community together in an informal environment, all right? Think of it like dating. It's like, hey, coffee dates, just an icebreaker, get an opportunity to meet people where they are. And when you talk about community policing, that's really the basis of it all. Understanding that meeting people where they are, all right, and just being able to engage. It could be as simple as saying hi to someone, right, that starts to build a relationship. Because you remember that contact, and that officer remembers that contact with you, right? And when you see each other the next time, depending on the contact anyway, it isn't as tense, right? And the more you normalize the presence of law enforcement, and law enforcement understands that hey, I met you, I got your card, I know who you are. When I talk to you the next time, now it's Al,
Right.
good morning, how you doing, right? What's going on, right? That continues that dialogue and continues building that relationship.
So, Keon,
Yes, sir.
coffee with a cop. Would you be inclined to go and sit down and have coffee?
Yes,
with
sir.
them?
That actually sounds very interesting. Just to sit down and get just build a good relationship and just talk. Break the ice. Know who's around. It's very important to be aware of who's around you, and that's one thing that we're missing. You have to know your neighbor. You have to know what's going on, because if you know what's going on, that puts you a little bit ahead, so you can make a better move, a positive move.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Big, okay, you see an officer.
I'm not having no coffee with the cop.
Okay. Well, tell us why. Tell us why.
But I'm not having no coffee with no cop, because I'm a pillar of this community, and I get down dirty with the people that aren't doing so well, as long as I get down with the people that are doing well, because I'm trying to reach souls throughout my life, and I don't want to be labeled as I'm talking with the cops and stuff of that nature. However, I don't have a problem with every now and then an officer pull his car up and bring some coffee and donuts into the barber shop and say, Mr. Ritchie, how you doing? Oh, everything is fine. How about yourself? I don't have a problem with that. Everything's fine. Thank you for doing a good job for the community.
Commander? Can STPD do that? Can you come in with some coffee and donuts and put on STPD's budget? Not on your budget.
Did you see the mayor's announcement this morning? I don't know about putting it on the PD's budget. However, I think things like that take place all the time. That's part of community policing too. And I'm going to give you an example of a person that I have worked with for the 30 years I'm here, and I've watched this individual grow and develop. He was a cadet when I first came on, and this person is now the senior captain of the police department. His name is Jerry, and Jerry is well known out in the community for doing simple acts of kindness. Jerry's the guy that he goes to Starbucks, right? And when he buys his coffee, he buys coffee for the next car behind him. Doesn't say anything, just buys coffee for the next person behind him and drives on. And things like that really help to build relationships and break the ice, mm-hmm. and help people understand that law enforcement officers are just people, mm-hmm. right? They're human, just like everything else. They have a job to do, right? And sometimes the job involves doing things that don't feel well for the receiver, the person on receiving it. It doesn't really feel well for the officer either, but it's the job that has to be done, right? You have to go into places and see behind the curtain of what's really going on in people's lives, right? And we all do well when we, before we have family over for a holiday, what do? Most of us clean up. Some of us don't. If you don't clean up, then people don't want to go to your house.
Okay.
Right? But officers don't have an opportunity to wait for that when they go into someone's house. Mm-hmm. They see everything. They see people where they are, right? And you have to be able to have the compassion, right? And try to not judge people for who they are and how they live, and just kind of help them through the situations that they're dealing with, right? And sometimes that isn't nice. All right, sometimes people, they need help. You got to force them to take help, right? Depending on the situation, right? But it's compassionate people that do that kind of work. They're carers before anything else.
Okay. Now, Big, you mentioned a little bit ago that you'd be very reluctant to have coffee with the cop. But being a pillar in the community, what would be the downside of community members seeing you having coffee with a cop and maybe having a positive experience and then sharing that with community members? Because again, people are looking to you saying, well, it's okay for Big, it's probably okay for me. Have you ever thought about that?
In this world, you know, you have those that do, and you have those that don't. You know, and the role I play in this city is a medium part in this city. And, you know, if you talk to the police, you know, a voluntary talking to the police, and next thing you know, somebody gets in trouble or something like that, then it's like, well, we just saw him talking to the police. You know, whether we was having coffee, whether we was having a steak dinner, it's just something that I was taught not to do. However, if they come to my point of business, then I welcome in with all arms. Because at the same time, you know, I'm out here with the criminals and the thieves, the dope dealers, you know, letting them know that God is good. It's a time where, like, you know, I have a nonprofit, I never mentioned that, it's called MARC, Molding Accountable Respectable Citizens. And what I do is I attack the at-risk, high-risk teenage and young adults. And sometimes in these high schools, people can get in arguments and fights and stuff like that, and these kids are at the brinks of going to jail. And I have been to these schools, and what I do is I will talk to the one person, go to his family's house, talk to them all collectively, then I will go to the other side, talk to that person and the family, and then we will schedule a meeting and we'll talk about the situation, and hopefully those two people can get up and realize that what they were arguing and beefing about was really nothing, because I'm the last stop from you going to jail, and I've been there, and I don't think that's what you guys really want in your life right now. And so, you know, I don't have a problem with the police, but it's a metaphor to all of that, to where we are not to be seen talking to the police in that type of situation. You got people that come in this barber shop and say, nah, I ain't going in there no more. They talking to the police. So we have a fine thread comb that we have to go through as well.
Okay. How do you respond to that, Commander? Your thoughts on it?
That's normal. I understand that position, given where I came from and given what I told you about myself. I will tell you that I've had people take that position publicly, but if they can talk to me without people seeing them publicly talk to me, they're willing to do that too. So it just depends on the individual. Funny thing is when you live in a community much like this one, you know, I see those people anyway, whether I'm in these clothes or not in these clothes, right? So that kind of changes things too, being out there in uniform versus not being in uniform.
Okay.
That would change a whole lot, you know. But it's just a code that you have, you know, and I live by it. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's just a thing. And, you know, but again, I don't have a problem if he came in that door dressed the way he is. He said, hey, Big, what's going on? Hey, how you doing? I'm going to shake his hand.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody else in here is going to dress him as such. And then if something of that nature happens, then when he walks out, what is he coming in here for? I mean, he comes and checks on us all the time. He's making sure the barbershop is safe.
Okay. So that's in essence, you know, they're meeting you where you're at.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because see, there's a trust that you got to have with a person in order for a person to want to come and talk to you about anything. And a lot of people come up to me and, you know, they're gangsters, and they ease up behind my ear and they'll say, my mother's sick. Think you can maybe pray for her? Got you. But if I'm not with them, they don't want to be with me.
Understood. We have a few minutes left, and I just want to be able to, you know, for the audience, Commander Kelso, what is the process for someone to report an incident to the police. Hey, I saw something, or I experienced something that was less than stellar. What is the process for that citizen to be heard?
There's a lot of different ways, and I'm taking it that you mean if a person is dissatisfied with the response they got from the police.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a ton of ways to engage with police leadership in that process. You can call and ask for a supervisor, right, yourself, or you can tell the officer that you want to speak to a supervisor. They have to call them. You can file a complaint online. You can go through the Commission on Police Practices to do a complaint, and once those complaints are received, they will be investigated. Someone will reach out to contact the complainant, right, just for clarity on their issues, and then go from there. And it's a process that is normalized in law enforcement. You contact people, like I said, on their worst day, and even though they may not be happy with the outcome, right? They have a voice to be able to use a vehicle to talk to police leadership about that experience.
Okay. And for the individuals that like to monitor the activities of police, they want to film, can you speak to that and individuals' rights to do that?
Everyone has the First Amendment. They certainly have a right to do those things. The only ask where it becomes a problem is if it interferes or prevents the officer from being able to safely do their business. If a person wants to film, they're certainly allowed to film, but don't put themselves into the situation. Get a safe distance, stay back, right? Try not to interrupt the officer, try not to distract the officer, take their attention away from what they're dealing with. But everybody's got a phone,
True.
When the media shows up, they know to keep a distance, film from a distance, right? But don't prevent or block the officer from being able to handle their duties.
Okay. We just have a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to allow the barbers here, any closing comments?
Stay positive. Positivity.
Okay.
And my brother Bigums, he spoke to me and Chris the other day. We were cutting hair, and he said, "You guys are not barbers no more. You guys, that's not your business no more. You know what your business is? You're in the business of making people feel better when they leave the shop." I was like, "Dang, that's amazing. I understand now. This is a service, and it's a service that gives back, helps others. So I'm very thankful to be a part of this service."
Okay. Shay?
I feel like we need more program for the youth out here with not just only police, but positive things are how they interact and what to do when, to kind of let them be aware in their rights, and also how to handle situations as well.
Chris? You gonna stay quiet on this one?
I'm gonna stay quiet on this one.
Okay. Commander Kelso?
I will tell you that just like the business I'm in, I kind of feel like being a barber, beautician, it's a service-oriented business as well, all right? And it's always about more than what it seems like on its face. Barbers, you're counselors, right? Pastors, sometimes, some places they feed you if they need to. You offer people guidance. You do a lot of things, but the biggest thing is you bring people together where they sit in a community, right, and talk with one another. That's really what it's all about.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank everyone for giving the Urban League today their time this morning in discussing community-based policing. Commander Kelso, I know you're a very busy man, so really appreciate you coming out and speaking to the community members and the barbers. And I just want to thank the film crew, everyone involved with this production, And you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Now that's a wrap. I want to thank everyone for being involved here today. This was the first episode of the Barbershop Chronicles. We will have more. We will be in the community talking to community members where they are at. The Urban League today is going to be coming to you. You're not going to be coming to us. We will meet you where you are at. So thank you all for your time today.